Boom, boom, boom. Okay, no dancing. So I was thinking, I was looking at different channels across the board, and woodworking is really a small genre in YouTube. You know, you could take all the, from Steve Ramsey on down, all the woodworkers and put all their viewers together, and we wouldn't even amount to some of the smaller channels on YouTube that only have 2 or 3 million subscribers. But, so I thought maybe I'm going to quit doing woodworking videos now and start doing torquing videos. They get lots of views. So, if you haven't caught the video I posted last night about this tenon making machine, you use your skill saw to make tenons on log furniture or, you know, standard lumber as well. I'm going to post a link below. Go check that out. It's a pretty cool little build, and it does some really fun things. I cut this one last night in the video itself. And today I wanted to do a video showing using a router on the same system, but I'm not gonna. It seems like in the last couple of years I have posted a whole bunch of videos where I've got some piece of material spinning at a really fast rate, and either a table saw or a skill saw or a router spinning at a really fast rate attacking that piece of wood. And every time I do, I have somebody comment, "That's crazy," or "You're crazy," or "That's neat, but I would never do it, that's dangerous, that's bad for your tools." So I wanted to take just a few minutes of your time to address that today. Living in a neighborhood. So if you'll bear with me, we're going to discuss that for just a few minutes and hopefully take some of the fears away and help you better understand the physics of what's happening here. So with this particular jig, and we're going to use this one as a base model, this skill saw runs at around 5,000 RPM, and when I set my drill up, to run at about 450, 500 RPM. So you have a couple of pretty good speeds going, you know, attacking each other. But what's happening is when I'm pushing that saw into the piece, I'm doing it slowly. I'm always cautious of my feed rate, and this is yellow birch, so it's a really hard wood. So with a softer wood, I could go a lot quicker, but with this one, I had to go pretty slow because it's a hardwood. So what's happening is the amount of wood per tooth being removed at a time is minuscule. I mean, you can look at these shavings right here, and the shavings are well under a 32nd of an inch thick. I mean, there's just very little there. So the pressure on the blade itself, let's say I have 3 or 4 teeth contacting the piece at one time, removing under a 32nd of an inch at a time. There's just not a whole bunch of sideways pressure. If you ever cut a cove on a table saw where you introduce a piece at an angle to the blade, that particular setup is putting a lot more pressure on the blade than if you have a piece going across it spinning at 500-600 RPM, because there's more stock being removed. Does that make sense? It's more aggressive because you're having to push harder to get through the material. There's less material being removed here because of the speeds. Now it looks like it's going fast, and it is, but there's so little amount of material being removed at a time that the sideways pressure on it's almost non-existent. And I know some of you might be going, "That's not blah, blah, blah." But if you were to take this saw right now, step up to here, and run it through, you could feel it. You would feel it in your hand, what's going on. When I hold this thing on here, I use 2 hands because I need to hold the guard out of the way. I want to make sure I keep it held down and against this fence. I don't feel uncomfortable running this. And after a few minutes working with somebody else, I'm sure they wouldn't feel uncomfortable either. And the same thing on my table saw machines. Now in the last couple of years, I've done a bowling ball on a table saw. I made wooden bowls on a table saw and a router. I've made wooden balls, perfect wooden spheres with a skill saw. I've made fluted trim with the skill saw. I've made decorative molding with the skill saw. I made a bowling pin with the skill saw. I know I'm missing some stuff, but I made a machine to use as a lathe on the table saw, or do basic lathe work on the table saw. And I've done this for 20 years, and I've never, you know, knock on wood, hurt myself. This is woodworking, and you can get hurt. It is inherently dangerous. You know, I would encourage you, whenever you step up to a tool, have a mental checklist, and I've been doing that since I was 10 years old and allowed to run a sander. Just have a mental checklist of the things that need to be in place for you to work safely. And after a while it becomes second nature, and I wish I could, I don't know, like teleport the feeling, the feeling of woodworking, the feeling of what it actually feels like to run this through. It doesn't feel aggressive, it's not scary. And like with anything, the first time you step up to any tool, it's a little intimidating. But as long as the jig is built securely, and that's the key here, as long as the jig is built securely, it's not bouncing around, your piece is secure, and you know what you're doing, you minimize the amount of risk. So, and that's with anything in woodworking. Now that being said, I didn't have a lot of time to really mess with this, so next week, Friday, I am going to put another video up about this jig using a router as well on this system. And I got some really cool ideas. I didn't have time to think about this last night, but I've had plenty of time to think about it now that that is done and I've got the video up. And I have some ideas and concepts that will, I think, impress. So I hope that you guys will join me next Friday when I have the new jig made, or this jig modified, and I will show you all kinds of wild and crazy things that we can do with a pretty simplistic system. I'll explain this a little better, how I pin it, how I make it turn, and the drill I would choose. So it'll be a long video, but it'll be well worth the watch. So I hope to see you then. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Even though this was a long, boring talking video, I do some really wild, innovative, and crazy machines. And I look forward to seeing you guys next Friday. I hope to have plans up for this as well. So keep your fingers crossed. I'll see if I can get them done.